Welcome to the workshop. Today we'll be building this monster of a PC with quad GPUs, 256 gigs of very fast RAM, 2 kilowatt PSU, fast storage. It's gonna be used for Chia, AI, and rendering. Hi, my name is Peter and you're watching Tech Jumble. So let's take a look at individual components. So here we have quad 4090s, we have some RAM. This is Kingston 32 gigabyte, 3600 megahertz memory. We have 8 sticks of that. We have one 1 terabyte Samsung 980 Pro. We have two of these Intel DCP 4610s, 1.6 terabytes. We have a power supply, FSP Cannon 2 kilowatt power supply, which is gold rated. We have our water cooling right here, which is Cooler Master something something made for SP3 platform. We have our HBA. It's a 9308E HBA. And for the case, we have Cooler Master H500M. So the star of the show here is probably this ASUS board. It's a Pro WS WRX 80E Sage motherboard. It has 8-channel memory. It has 7 PCIe slots. It has 2 U.2 slots, 3 M.2 slots. It has a BMC on board, which is going to allow me to manage it from my office upstairs, and I don't have to come here if there is a problem. It basically has everything, and it's going to drive this server station, workstation, sworkstation without an issue. We can now start this build, but before we do that, we have one last component to check out, which is the CPU. The CPU I got for this build is Threadripper PRO 5955WX. It has 16 very fast cores, 32 threads, and it's gonna drive this monster of a system with ease. Okay, so let me move everything off the table, put the motherboard back on, install the CPU, and go from there. Be right back. Alright, so the board is on the table. Let's take a quick look at it, and then we're gonna proceed with installing the CPU. So we have 7 PCIe slots right here. They're all times 16, they're all PCIe 4, and they're all directly connected to the CPU. Then we have 3 of these M.2 slots. 2 of these are connected to the chipset, and 1 of these is connected to the CPU. Then we have 2 U.2 slots. The first one is connected to the CPU, the second one is connected to the chipset. So, for our high performance storage, we're gonna use this M.2 slot and this U.2 slot, while I'm gonna use this M.2 slot for my system, for my boot drive. As I said before, we have additional power connectors here. So we have two 6-pin power connectors right here and an additional PCIe 8-pin power connector right there. We're gonna utilize all of them. I just want to guarantee clean and stable power to my GPUs. In addition to that, we have two CPU connectors right here that provide CPU with power, and the motherboard connector. We have a reset and a power on switch. We have a few deep switches. This one controls the VGA, and these two control the BMC settings on the board. That's that for a quick overview. Now we can proceed with installing the CPU. For me, this is the most nerve-wracking part of the build process, installing the CPU. We can easily ruin the board in this step, so let's hope I don't Linus it. So just before we install it, let's take another look at this wonderful piece of tech right here. It's a great looking CPU, and it's massive. That's what she said. Let's unscrew the bracket and let's install the CPU. We're gonna use this supply tool, which is a torque wrench. It has about 1 Newton meters of torque on it. We're gonna unscrew the bracket going from 3 to 1. It should pop up, and then we're gonna slot in the CPU. Okay, the lid is out. Let's pull out the tray. We're gonna remove the protective cover from the tray. We're gonna take our CPU, and then we're gonna insert it like so. I don't know if you heard, but there was a distinct click. Now we are gonna remove this protective cover from the socket. Okay. All right, so that went well, I think. I don't think there are any bent pins because this board is practically new. It was an open box, but still. Let's close this down gently. Okay, so that's that. Let's close the bracket and let's install it. So I'm gonna take a few turns here, then go to 2, just a few turns, then go to 3. Okay, so now that we have it set a bit, we're gonna take something like this. All right, so I'm back. So I needed to get something like this. We need to torque this all the way down. Nah, I joke. It was a bad joke anyway. Okay, let's get back to it. Okay, we are back at it. So now let's properly torque this down. We need to torque it going from 1 to 2 to 3, and we need to hear a click from this tool. Okay, that's a click. Second click. That's it. Third click. The CPU installed. Let's hope we haven't bent any pins. I hope not. We shouldn't have. We follow the instructions to the letter. Okay, with that done, we can now install RAM. Okay, we have 8 sticks, 32 gigs, 3600 megahertz, non-ECC RAM. So all of these components that I have right here are either used, bought used, or I already had them. For example, these RAM sticks come from my workstation upstairs. I used that workstation in the beginning for plotting, but now I really do not have use for 256 gigs of RAM, so they're gonna go into this thing. And the M.2 that I have right there, that's from my gaming ring upstairs. I haven't gamed in probably about 6 months, so I disassembled that thing. I pulled out 4 sticks of RAM to put in my workstation, and I pulled that to put into this machine. With RAM memory now installed, we can proceed with installing this M.2, which is Samsung 980 Pro. And then we are gonna install this M.2 to U.2 cable in this slot that's connected directly to the CPU for my fast storage. I'm gonna install it and be right back with you. All right, I installed the M.2 right here. I'm gonna just go ahead and peel this protective cover off from the heatsink, like so. This goes right here, and this goes right here. Okay, M.2 installed. Now let's install the cable right here. All right, so I've installed this M.2 to U.2 cable, and I think I can squeeze this cable beneath this heatsink and pass it through here. So let me try that and be right back. So that didn't work. The cable is just too thick here. I'm just gonna route this cable like so, and it's gonna go behind the board, and it's gonna be fine. I will just not use this heatsink. I'm gonna just put it back in the box. Also, yeah, I forgot to mention this cable was the first cable I got when I started Chia plotting. So this is also a reused component, which is great. The board is now fully assembled, so let me get the case, put it on the workbench, install the board, and go from there. Be right back. This case is Cooler Master H500M. and it was initially my workstation PC case. The fans I have in this case are Nidec Ultraflow 120 by 38 millimeter fans. These are high performance server fans. These are 1.6 amps each, but I will be software limiting them to only 50% of their max speed, which is about 3.3 thousand RPM, which is going to be plenty to fill this case with a bunch of fresh air. I had to slightly modify this case in order to fit the board. I had to cut a piece from here, and I also had to add an additional PCIe slot right here. I want to hang the last GPU from the last slot of the motherboard in order to allow each GPU to have enough room to breathe, as well as be able to fit an HBA inside the case. The reason the board wouldn't fit is because the the plate right here is not on a single level. It has a ramp and then a flat surface, and that flat surface interferes with the board's backplate, so I had to cut it. With all of that said, let me get the board and let's install it. That took a bit longer than expected. This board doesn't really have a standard screw layout, so I had to remove standoff that's here and the standoff that's here in order for it to fit. Now it properly fits. Everything looks great. I connected the fans. I also connected USB and USB Type-C, and I have connected case control, so power, reset, and then we have status LED and HDD LED. Next thing is to connect PCIe cards and see how they fit. Be right back. The case is now fully assembled, or as assembled as it could be, without cables. All 4 GPUs are in. This one is connected to the motherboard using a riser. I had to remove these plastic pieces from the riser because they were causing GPU to bend slightly, like so, when they were in. I hope I didn't damage anything. I did scratch the board a bit when I was removing these plastic pieces. They were in pretty good. Um, I hope I haven't severed any connections, but if I did, there are tools in the workshop that can help me fix it. What are the next steps for this build? The next steps are to install the cooling and then do the cables and cable management. And from there, that's gonna practically be it, I hope. Let's see. I don't think I like how I positioned this PSU. I should have flipped it the other way around. That way the connectors would make a lot more sense, because currently CPU connectors are here and I would have to route them to the back of the case and then up and then forward again. I'm not sure how much I like that. Also, peripheral cables from here would have to be routed beneath all the other cables, and it's gonna be awkward. So what I think I'll do is I'll flip this PSU, even if it needs to suck a bit of a hot warm air from the case itself. I well, will it suck hot air from inside the case? I mean, we have these 3 massive fans that are gonna fill this case full of fresh air from the front. I don't think it's gonna be an issue. And if it's an issue, well, I'm gonna disassemble it and assemble it again in another orientation. As you can see, it all fits quite nicely. I really, really like this part right here. It looks so cool. So you have 3 GPUs all properly spaced, and you have this one. Every single GPU here draws in fresh air pushed from the front. These cards are gonna be cool and quiet. It's gonna be great. I mean, the quietness part doesn't really matter because it's gonna sit here in the workshop and I'm never gonna hear it for the most part. So yeah, it's gonna be great. Okay, so I've decided to actually flip the PSU. So let me get to it and I'll be right back. It's flipped and I like it a lot better this way. All the connectors are in their proper place, and it's gonna allow me to cleanly route the cables and do cable management. I hate when my cables are all jumbled together and I cannot get them untangled when I need to remove or replace something. So this is gonna be great. There is about 1/2 fat finger of space between this 3090 and the PSU, but I think that's gonna be plenty for it to breathe. I really have no doubt it's just gonna be fine. And here, I was afraid that I'll need longer cables. Look at the size of these cables, man. Like, oh boy, it's gonna be a nightmare to cable manage all of this. So I already started and I'm already having problems. Oh, and we need to put all of these in. Like, we don't have extra cables. That's that. So, in addition to being all black, these cables feel so nice in hand and they are easy to work with. Like, I mean, you can bend them pretty easy. I'm really impressed with the cable quality. All the props to FSP. Wow. Also, the power supply cable is very thick as well. It's 16 amps, 240-volt cable. It's massive. The case is mostly wired up. The only thing that remains are CPU cables. But before I connect those, I need to put cooling on and connect cooling headers because those are going to be really hard to access once I have CPU cables in. The cooler is now pre-assembled. I sandwiched the top plate in between the water cooler and the fans, and on top of that there's going to be a shroud. I'm gonna mount this inside the case slowly. These hoses right here are pretty stiff. They do not bend much. I have no clue how they're gonna fit, but let's hope they fit well. With a bit of persuasion, the top plate is now in the case. It's mounted, it's screwed down. The clearances are very, very tight, but it all fits. Now, what I need to do is bend these hoses a bit and mount a cooler to the CPU. I've prepped all the surfaces. This is now nice and shiny. CPU as well. Let's put some paste on and let's install it. The paste is in. I think I put a bit too much, but the die is large and the CPU itself is big, so more paste, it's not gonna hurt it. CPU cooler successfully mounted. Let's connect that CPU power and let's turn it on for the first time. Now that's what I call wired up. Cooling has been properly connected. All the cabling is in order. I've double checked and triple checked all the connections. All the connectors are properly in place. I've cut the nibs off of the silicone mounting equipment and I've connected the monitor, the keyboard, and the USB stick that contains a bunch of installed ISOs for all the different distros that I'll be trying out. The next thing to do is to fire this up and see if it works or not. First PSU power on. Let's do a quick smell test. Oh, it smells like greatness. All right. We don't have any weird stuff going on. We don't have any weird smells. Now let's turn it on. All right. It works. And let's see if it properly turns on. Okay. Status LEDs are alive. They are currently showing green. I think that's the BIOS initializing. I see the status codes changing, so that's good. We don't have any status codes that are stuck. We are still on the BIOS initialization step, and the codes are still shifting through, so that's good. We don't have the cold up. Okay, it's alive. We have AA as the status code. Yep, that's definitely an AA code, so that means that we have successfully booted, probably from the USB stick. That's great. That means that we had no memory issues, no CPU issues, and no power issues. Great. Okay, I've booted off the USB drive just to see whether or not it will boot at all, and it booted successfully. I have a bunch of different distros here that I'm gonna be trying out for the next couple of days, and then I'll get back to you. I'm gonna get back with the full setup, and then we're gonna test plotting, we're gonna test AI model training, and then we're gonna test rendering. And I'll probably go with Fedora. I'm not sure currently, but probably Fedora for Workstation 38, I think is the latest. I need to update this USB stick to the latest version. But I'm gonna probably use Fedora Workstation for this machine. Now, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me for this long, and I'll see you in the next one.